staff salary and wages will be reviewed. Per the DPI, 75 to 80% of most public school district budgets are spent on staff salaries and benefits, which is not out of the ordinary or a complaint from me. For to assure quality staff, we must be attempting to be competitive. From what I've been told, our district is on the low end of that salary. Our current school district annual budget is approximately $30 million. And if I use a lower percent, we're going to be spending $22,500,000 for our staff. We need good staff to teach and aid our children in their development and to help them to learn the necessary skills to be successful in life. That is the school's primary purpose, but currently we're really having trouble throughout this district to meet that goal. My primary concern tonight is the use of the remaining $7.5 million for the rest of our district's need. Per recent requests of information, which I'm now being charged for, I've learned that our district pays an additional $370,000 in contracted fees for CESA 6 and 9 services, CP Consulting, which the best I can figure is a special ed staff equity team leadership training, but I wasn't certain, and the Mathematics Institute of Wisconsin. We are also paying 3 teacher coaches approximately $182,000 per year. All of these additional expenses are to aid our teachers in teaching our children. But what happens when there's no ESSER funds? These costs will be expected out of the remaining $7,800,000. And has there been any community input for the use of ESSER funds? Because I believe that was part of the regulation, is that the community should be part of that. And I'm a taxpayer, I've not received anything. Item D on your agenda is the district administration. Julie Sprague and board president Andy Mary have made a big push to spend $36,000 of our tax money for the purpose of a one-year contract with the Donovan Group, which is a communication consultancy company. Dr. Sprague's reasoning for this need is to enhance communication between the school district and the community, while President Mary's goal has been to help convince this community we need to pass $1 million referendum. I and other members of this community believe before you spend any more of our tax dollars, we need to identify the problems and causes. Some of the questions that come to mind and to other people that I talk to are, why are families and staff exiting this school district and at such a rapid pace right now? Why are families that reside here choosing to send their children to other districts or just other schools? If we don't figure out the cause of this hemorrhage or to identify and stop it, our district's not going to exist anymore. And if that happens, Antigo's going to be a ghost town. And I've heard for 2 years that this is because of COVID, our low testing and all the problems, and that's not true. There are 413 school districts that scored above us, and every one of them dealt with COVID. So we have some internal problems. We have got to figure out what they are. A recent visit to the DPI website, I found their job description of the district administration. It stated that the primary job of a school district administrator is to serve as an agent for the Board of Education, as a CEO for the district, and to provide leadership in all aspects. It listed 48 responsibilities, and you can all sigh, I'm not going to list all those, but there were a few that stuck out to me. One was to serve as an advocate for students and their educational program, to ensure that the district maintains positive school communication relations, and to keep parents and the community apprised of the status of the school and their programs. It also recognized that the curriculum of the district is the most important part of the program, and we know by other presentations that we have just a piecemeal, I believe, reading program that, for 10 years. Why are we not spending ESSER money to take care of some of our curriculum needs? But that has never been discussed with the community. Again, a real thorn in my side. Our tax dollars run this district. And Dr. Sprague, I don't mean this to be disrespectful, but you are the top paid employee of this district. You receive $580 per contracted day. That is all public record. And it's probably more than many people bring home at the end of a full work week. You also receive stipends for traveling within the district. This is a lot of taxpayer money, and now you're asking this board to use ESSER funds without input from the community and to add another $33,000 in tax dollars to help you do your job, which is to communicate. And I think we need to be much more responsible and accountable with our funds and take a look at what's going on internally and use what we have and not spend more of our money. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Carol. And our last speaker would be Pam Augustine.
All, there we go. I want to thank you all for the time that you sacrifice in your evenings. I haven't been here for the last couple months because I value my evenings, but I appreciate you. And Trina, you too, all of you. You're elected by the community. Our community values our children. I want to talk a little bit about the same things that Carol talked about, how we're spending the funds that are coming in. And there, a couple months ago when I was here, there was one of my friends that said, there are a bunch of people here that don't even have children in this public school system. That's because my children are grown, and I think she may have been talking about me and one of the friends sitting next to me who has a grandchild in the system also. I have 9 grandchildren in the Antigo School District, and quite a few to come. We have 21 grandchildren. Some are homeschooled. I homeschooled my children, and I have one thing that I disagree with Carol about, is that we do not have to spend a lot more money to get good teachers. These young people are coming out of college and looking for a community to get a start in, and a lot of them are going to be well, they should all be well qualified, right? And an interview can tell you a lot with those people, just how important this is to them, whether they're just getting a job or whether they actually care about who they're teaching. So let's see, I didn't bring any notes. And yeah, I'm nervous, you can probably tell. But the other things. I guess what I was thinking also is we also talk a lot about how we have such poor people, impoverished people in our community. And I homeschooled those 7 children of ours, and 6 of them live in this school district with our grandchildren. And they are doing a really great job raising their children and paying their taxes. 6 of my children and their spouses. And so we're talking about their tax money. They're working hard. They're not all of them way up in the income brackets. And so when we can talk about our impoverished children that are in the school system, but what about all of us that are paying the taxes? I'm asking you to be very responsible as far as how you make decisions here with the taxpayer money, with my children's money. As they are sending their children to school, it's important to them as far as not just the money, but how we're teaching the children, the content of what the teachers are teaching. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pam. And with that, we will go on to our student representative report, Tori.
Okay. The AHS musical had performed The Little Mermaid, and that was the 11th, 12th, 13th, 17th, 18th, and 19th. And I went to it, and I thought it was amazing, so that was awesome. They also performed for the elementary schools on the 16th. The ACT for the juniors was on March 15th. The 8th grade went to school and did different class rotations. 9th grade went to NTC and the school forest. 10th grade took a field trip to UW Green Bay. And if you were a senior and you had your portfolio done, you could stay home that day. And if you missed that day, the makeup day is March 23rd. Third quarter ends this Friday. And the Unified School District of Antigo Art Show opens March 28th. Spring break is from March 28th to April 1st. Superior Smiles was at the high school on March 8th. Spring sports have started, and the track team has been doing really well this year. They took 2nd and 3rd at their last 2 meets. Forensic is going to state this year, and the Ford exam is going on right now for the 8th and 10th graders. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for moderating last night at the forum. We'll go on to the consent agenda. If somebody would like to make a motion.
I move the board approve the agenda minutes from the February 22nd, 2022 Board of Education meeting, financial reports for February 2022, consideration of current bills, check numbers 5618 to 5713 in the amount of $150,384.12, ACH number 212200784 through 202100311 in the amount of $728,675.96, and one wire transfer in the amount of $16,366.87 for a total of $895,426.95.
Second.
Okay, any questions or comments? Then we'll go ahead with the roll call.
Bardo?
I will vote yes, but I will abstain on check number 5675.
Borneman?
Yes.
Deep?
Yes.
Gagnon?
Sorry, I can't hear.
Wade, can you?
Pass.
Maddox Nelson?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Newfeld?
Yes.
Schrader?
Yes.
Gagnon?
Yes.
Okay, we'll go on to new business and the approval of the committee of the whole minutes from March 8th.
I move the board approve the committee of the whole minutes from March 8, 2022.
Well, I'll second that.
Okay, any questions or comments on those minutes? Then all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we will go on to item B, early college credit and start college now data.
We included this graph for the board to look at because a few of us speculated last meeting that numbers were down. You can see that Mary Kay compiled a few years of data for you. I guess it just depends on the year. We've had worse numbers in the past, but I checked with Mr. Rogers, and CNA class remains the most frequently taken by our students, and it really just depends on the kids and their interest.
Okay, any questions on that? Okay, we'll go on to board action items, and item A is consideration to approve the 2022-2023 budget update, approve adding $1,200 to each cell of the teacher's schedule.
I move the board approve adding $1,200 to the base salary on the teacher certified staff salary schedule, resulting in an average increase of 4.7%. Second.
Okay, Tim went over this at the committee of the whole meeting. Anything you want to add at this time, Tim, or?
So Andy, what I'd like the board to understand that I'm using sort of building next year's budget based on some assumptions. And if you notice, if we look first on that sheet and we look at the revenue side of the equation, that the budget assumption is that we're going to, our 3-year rolling average for the revenue line is going to decline by 42 students. Our, based on the single a year, if we look at the year over year, I had used in the per pupil category of aid, I had used the drop, and we're probably going to drop around 35 students next year. So the aid is actually paid on the 3-year average. So that was my mistake. So I made the adjustment in the aid calculation there, and that would be a new number for you. And then it's just administratively, you can see we've moved the teacher increase over. Are asking tonight for that, for you to either make a decision on whether you want to approve that.
Okay, any questions or comments from the board?
Tim, I see we have a bunch of resignations tonight. So what do you speculate that our savings will be average per person?
So, Dr. Bardo, what I used is a number of 20,000. And if you look, I also updated that number on the report. And one of the retirements that we had was an individual that hadn't been with the district that long. And so I didn't think the retirement savings would be quite as high.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. If there's no further questions or comments, we'll go ahead and do a roll call.
Borneman,
Yes.
Peak,
Yes.
Gagnon,
Yes.
Maddox Nelson,
Yes.
Newfeld,
Yes.
Schrader,
Yes.
Bardo,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes. And we'll go on to item B, consideration to approve retirement HRA district contribution plan.
I move the board authorize administration to transfer the funds from the salary budget to the Fund 73 Trust for the purposes of making a contribution to the district's HRA plan in an amount not to exceed $97.
Yeah, okay, I'll second that too.
Okay, any questions or comments?
Just making sure, Tim, the document that we have, I don't see any changes from last year. Is that correct, or is there changes?
There's
'Cause
one.
I didn't see any red, so
Yeah,
that's why I'm asking.
there's just, the document hasn't changed. We had an item that we addressed last year with, the previous version of the report had, that we needed to address administration because the administration plan hadn't been determined. And we have done that with administrators receiving TSA contribution.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? We'll go ahead with the roll call.
Yes.
Gagnon,
Yes.
Maddox Nelson,
Yes.
Newfeld,
Yes.
Schrader,
Yes.
Bardo,
Yes.
Borneman,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes. We'll go into item C, consideration to approve 18 Fab Lab workstations.
I move the board approve the Vanguard bid of $24,966 to upgrade the Fab Lab workstation.
Second.
Go ahead if you have something.
Yeah, the only thing I want to say on this is the Vanguard bid is slightly higher, but the graphics card is a much better processor and stuff in there, so that's why I'm asking to spend a little bit more. I think it'll take us farther into the future than the lower rated.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Dr. Sprague or Mark, I'm not sure to address the question too. Can you share a little bit about the way in which we use the Fab Lab or community involvement or employer involvement?
Well, in addition to the students, and I know Clint Rogers may have something to add, we published dates this fall for the community to come in.
Right.
Last time I checked, employees would give me feedback on what they had made and that it wasn't well attended, but that those who did attend really enjoyed it. So I don't have any hard data for you on numbers, just that we do have, I think it's, is it weekly?
Yeah, on Thursdays.
Weekly on Thursdays.
What time?
We'll check and put that in, we can review for you.
We also have our eighth grade, one of our eighth grade rotation classes in there, so it's used on a daily basis. And we recently are in discussions with the town or the city on creating some signs in there between the Fab Lab and the graphics, or in our metal shop. So it's used for a couple different reasons.
Thank you.
I believe the board got walked through about 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Is it really that long ago already? Yeah, that was 4 years ago.
Any other questions or comments on that? Then we'll for that.
Gagnon,
Yes.
Maddox Nelson,
Yes.
Neufeld,
Yes.
Schrader,
Yes.
Bardo,
Yes.
Borneman,
Yes.
Deep,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes. Then we'll go on to item D, consideration to approve new security camera system.
Okay, I move the board approve the purchase of a new security camera system from Cam Corner Connecting Point in the amount of $75,010.
Second.
Okay,
All right, thank you. I'm gonna first hit on the bullet points that I have there. The connecting point one is a one-time appliance fee because they're creating a hybrid system for us instead of going fully cloud-based. We'd have to change all the cameras in the whole district not to go to a hybrid system. And there's no way we have the money to replace all the cameras in the district. And the elementary ones just were replaced a few years ago, so it'd be silly to replace those. So that appliance will cover us until we can transition to the fully cloud-based camera system. So that's why there's a one-time fee there. The CDW double asterisk there, I just wanted to mention, and I'm going to talk to my rep tomorrow, they really lowballed us on that server. That server that they quoted for the $15,230 is well below the requirements of what we asked for, and that server would not even handle what we do now. So it was just a little bit disturbing that he did that to us. The Marco system reflects more of just a different type of server. Otherwise, we'd be staying status quo, not moving really any forward with our system at all. They just have smaller appliances at all the buildings instead of having the two big servers at the middle school and high school. To me, that's not really an improvement on what we have. It's more of almost a half step backwards from what we have right now. The systems tech quote, they do not handle servers at all. So what we've done, we've had them in the past, but in the past we've always had to buy servers from a third party, which creates another middleman in it, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to look at the total camera, security camera system, is to try and take us a little bit more into the future instead of just relying on status quo so much. So with systems tech, we'd be buying all the cameras and the software, but then we have to rely on somebody else to generate the servers, which means we have to maintain them, keep them updated and everything. So I would like to go away from that system only because we don't have to, that's another party we have to deal with, and a whole other part of the system that is just a little antiquated in my opinion. But I mean, if board approved, I mean, we can go that way if we want. I wanted to make sure I was showing what it would take to stay what we're doing opposed to moving forward to a cloud-based camera system. So the only comparison really to the camera corner one is the system tech option. Well, like I said, we have to buy the servers at $38,762, which brings their total up to comparable with the camera corner. And in the future, I have the 5-year cost laid out there. For that $1,400 difference, we don't have those servers to maintain. We don't have to keep them updated. It's just a labor intensive, probably take up more than that $1,400 difference would be. And in 5 years, we don't have to have that appliance for the camera corner anymore because we should be able to rotate our old cameras out in that 5-year span to totally go with that cloud-based system. The only other thing I wanted to mention, and I think Mary Jo had it, or Mary Kay, sorry, had it applied to the Fab Lab quote, was the explanation of where the funds are actually coming from the purchase of these devices. And my things tonight was up from the Emergency Connectivity Fund. Back in January, I had applied for over $206,000 from the grant. It was accepted, and then in the middle of February, I believe February 11th or so, I've sent in my first reimbursement request that I will be getting back almost $191,000 back to help pay for else's funds or anything, I'm just taking from that connectivity fund cost that I asked for.
Okay.
Okay. I'm not really up on like security stuff. When I was still teaching the buildings, there was no security. So Mark, is there a central place in the district that is like the central security place, or does each building have its own?
Right now, each building has its own archiving box that
Okay.
handles on each one.
Okay,
There is one centralized location where we log into to get to all of those sites,
okay,
and that's the connection that the police department has also right now,
okay,
so that they can log into that one centralized location and access all the cameras, but each site has their own set of cameras and their own individual box that archives the video right now.
so this thing that we're going to approve tonight, that's for the high school and the middle school?
Well, yes and no. It's covering the whole district, but what precipitated this change was that the servers, the archiving servers at the high school and middle school are end of life in July.
Right,
So I had to do something by July to remedy that situation. I had to do boxes, so in that, I started looking at other options instead of just staying where we are. I started looking at other options and at demos and everything of software that would take us a little
but
bit
the
more.
elementary has only been a couple of years, so everything's good there.
Right, exactly. So we don't have to replace that equipment, and like I said, that one centralized location point will still be there.
Okay.
It'll just be a little bit different than what we were using, even though technically the software is almost identical to what we were using, so there's really not much training for the police or the principals and anybody else that has to get to look at the cameras that had it will be very familiar with what's going into the new ones.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Explain the 5-year cost for the camera corner one. So it's sort of like $10,000 a year, essentially.
Yes, for the licensing of all the cameras in the district. Right.
So the license is actually for the cameras or for the
It's
cloud part?
it's for the software that accesses the cameras in the cloud. The cloud we have, with the new cameras, they're actually archiving within themselves. And if we want a longer retention, then we can move it to their free cloud space, okay? And then, but that licenses is for that software with the amount of cameras we have in our district.
How many is that, just out of curiosity?
We'll have 100 when we're done with this. We have replacing 11 and buying 3 new to make it an even 100.
Okay, any other questions? Then we'll go ahead with a roll call.
Maddox Nelson,
Yes.
Newfeld,
Yes.
Schrader,
Yes.
Bardo,
Yes.
Borneman,
Yes.
Deep, Gagnon,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes. And we'll go on to item E, consideration to approve the CESA 9 shared service contract.
I move the board approve the CESA 9 shared service contract in the amount of $156,786.
I see.
Okay, any questions or comments on this?
The only one I have, Tim, is what was the increase? Because it always happens.
Dr. Bartle, Julie actually put together a memo and as part of the attachment that explains that.
Let's see that.
I think I said it verbally last meeting.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I mean, I know they always go up. It's because it's the way it works.
So I did notate on last year's, we added on line 2, customized continuous school improvement services, 40 days. It's noteworthy, as I said last time, that we've always had that. They were just on individual contracts as we started working, let's say, with our math department, and then chose to add days. So now you're on the front end of the
Rather
service
than adding.
agreement, right. And then we added also 15 days for on line line 4. Those are new for 10,500. And finally, on line 51 for speech language pathologist, 114 days for a total of 60,000. Those are the additions and changes.
Okay. What was the difference on line 3? I'm sorry. So those are the changes? The
Line 3, there is no change.
I'm at 2.
2, we added 40 days for 26,600.
Okay. Gotcha. Thank you.
You are welcome.
Okay, any other questions or comments on this? Then we'll go ahead with the roll call.
Neufeld,
Yes.
Schrader,
Yeah. Yes.
Bartle,
Yes.
Borneman,
Yes.
Deep,
Yes.
Yes.
Gagnon, Maddox Nelson,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes. Move on to item F, consideration to approve the middle school health teacher.
I move the board approve the middle school health teacher position as presented.
Okay. Any questions or comments on this? I don't know where this at the Carl meeting. Then we'll go ahead with the roll call.
Schrader,
Yes.
Bartle,
Yes.
Borneman,
Yes.
Deep,
Yes.
Gagnon,
Yes.
Maddox Nelson,
Yes.
Neufeld,
Oh, yes.
Mary,
Yes. And we'll go on to item G, consideration to approve alternative education teacher.
The board approve the alternative education teacher as presented.
Second.
Questions or comments on this?
I would just like to add, this came about from the GETO 2 presentation we had last meeting. And when we talked about the possible expansion of our programming for students at risk of not graduating, we felt like it was fairly well received by the board, so this was not on committee of the whole, it was just part of the presentation. The reason I chose to put it on for action tonight is it will take the absolute right candidate to make a difference in that position. So we thought if the board should choose to approve, we'd gain a month for the posting and hopefully have really strong candidates applying. That was the only reason it's on for tonight.
Dr. Sprague, is that Lon Evil, who is the other one?
Correct.
Okay.
So this would be adding a second.
Correct. We talked about how the GETO 2 is for 17-year-olds and how already, and I understand students present differently at all ages, but we certainly can identify those who might need something different than the traditional setting far earlier. So the earliest we could impact with this position would be 8th grade. But we still feel strongly if we can disrupt that pattern of not being successful earlier, we'd love to see our graduation rate increase and be able to provide for student needs that we're just not, because of numbers, we're not able to help everyone right now.
Can you remind me, do we also transitioning from partners to GETO 2 at the high school? Are we also going to be budgeting for an IA?
Well, as when we shared that partners agreement, the IA was, well, an employee of the tech. The fee that we paid partners really covered that. It helped the tech pay for that position. So yes, we would have to, not have to, but ideally we would like that employee to come to work for the district, but that has not been established yet.
Okay, so we would bring the IA over, which essentially we're budgeting for that already.
Correct.
But then are we anticipating adding a second IA or adding an IA?
So we did not present that. The teacher would be the most critical point to get this programming off the ground. So we've had some preliminary discussions about spacing in the high school, and right now the credit recovery room, how that is used, who staffs that, and how we could maximize human resources and space to help the kids. So we actually haven't discussed that, Jill, but I suppose it's possible we would ask, yes.
And then currently, the staff, our current contract is 15, or 30 students, 15 at a time. So then does that mean by adding a second position, we are essentially 30 students, 60 total? Like, would that double?
Not necessarily, because this program we could design and serve who we wanted, unless Heidi, you remember, are there any enrollment confines that we have? I didn't think so, thank you. So for the GETO 2 program, yes, that would have to stay at 30, but how we service the other kids and how many would be up to us with this position.
This position is under GETO 2.
No, this would be an additional alternative high school teacher, but not following the GETO 2 criteria. That would be Long-Ebel that we already have.
I think the position's certainly in need, and there's no question on that on my end. I just have a lot of questions because I wasn't prepared for, I thought this was potentially an action on the approving the analysis. Otherwise, I would have reached out further to ask the questions. What stood out to me the most in the analysis review is approximately 25% of the graduating class of 2022 has been on the roster at one point or another due to credit deficiency. Out of curiosity, is there what's our data show in terms of the classes? Is there a common class or classes that students are struggling in, or can we narrow that down more specifically on where the struggles are with credit deficiency?
I cannot. I specifically, Clint, are you still out there? Core areas, yeah. I specifically know the math department has a pretty substantial failure rate right now across all grades. That's something we continue to examine, but that's the only one I'm familiar with.
And to be clear too, this is, while it's credit recovery potentially, it's really about reaching the whole child before they get to the point of credit deficiency and failure. We're trying to, through our universal work that we're doing, but then also this type of position, which I did when I was in Rhinelander, is to try to intervene around not just the academics and failure, but why, how do we support you, why, it's the whole child, whether it's emotionally, behaviorally, whatever, so that, and working with the teachers, this isn't just an isolated program, it's working with the core teachers to try to come up with creative ways to help support the students in the classroom as well. So it's not just a pull out, it's a trying to intervene before it gets to a critical point where the only option they have is a GETO 2 type program. We do have an IA already. Gail Moore runs the program right now, the credit recovery, and she's an instructional assistant. And so that's what Julie was talking about, I think, with as far as being creative about using her. So it doesn't necessarily mean that we would add a position. We might repurpose, what her role is to support those programs.
Thank you. I think this would probably be for a different discussion, but my follow-up question in terms of if math is a common area, then what we're also doing to address and identify those barriers, because this would still only serve a certain amount of students, and 25% of a graduating class with credit deficiency is concerning. We know our math scores are low, so I'm not saying it's necessarily within the context of this agenda item, but that I'm just sharing my feedback of I'd also like to know more about what we're doing to address that bigger concern with credit deficiency in math.
Okay. Anything else? and we'll go ahead with the roll call.
Bartle,
Yes.
Borneman,
Yes.
Deep,
Yes.
Yes.
Gagnon, Maddox Nelson,
Yes.
Newfeld,
Yes.
Schrader,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes. We'll go into item H, consideration to approve full-time middle school counseling secretary.
I move the board approve a full-time middle school counseling secretary as presented.
Second.
Okay, any questions or comments on this?
And that's replacing someone who's retiring or resigning, correct?
It's actually increasing the hours. So on that sheet, it's always been 29 hours, but when we consolidated and added the grade levels, we didn't change that. It's really a full-time position,
Okay.
and it's time we make that right.
And to be clear, it's not just about the part of, if you read through this is to support also, like we have a mental health navigator and a social worker right now who are doing double duty, so it'll be supporting the middle school, but also district-wide, who are housed at the middle school right now.
So is the person who's working part-time now gonna,
She's retiring, so
She's
it's kind of a
retiring.
double, like we're
Okay.
replacing it, but with a full-time person.
okay. Any other questions? Then roll call.
Borneman,
Yes.
Deep,
Yes.
Gagnon,
Yes.
Maddox Nelson,
Yes.
Newfeld,
Yes.
Schrader,
Yes.
Bartle,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes. We'll go on to item I, consideration to approve Donovan Group contract for communication services.
I move the board approve the Donovan Group contract for communication services as presented.
Second.
Okay, any questions or comments on this?
I do. Is that okay?
Yep.
Okay, so when I was hired 4 years ago, I recognized we didn't have a full-time communications person, but there was also no way I was going to advocate for that at that time. And then we've had 2 board workshops where communication has risen to the top of the board's self-identified scores as an area that we should look at or consider for improvement. The first was in the fall 2019, and then again just this past September. And at that time, Angel Zimmerman was on the board, and the workshop we had, the woman from WASBO, Louise Blankenship, I had to think of her name. When she came in, she talked to the board about what we could do to really tell our story. So it's not just about communication from the superintendent, although that's critically important. It's more about all of us being responsible to have access and garner feedback from the community so that we are all kind of singing the same tune about the Unified School District of Antigo. And after that meeting, Angel and Jill had kind of worked together and thought that we would meet again and plan next steps. Well, Jill resigned, and now, I'm sorry, Angel resigned, and now it's March 2022, and this is an opportunity. Make no mistake, I'm not asking for taxpayer dollars. I've heard criticisms that we have $6 million in ESSER funds, and what are we going to spend that on? And I'm suggesting that for $36,000 of ESSER funds, we would not have to replace this we talk about how you have to ramp up your budget then so that what you are currently purchasing you can continue to sustain down the road. This is not the case. I believe that the Donovan Group would help us set up systems, and most importantly, what I'm excited about is they would help provide a roadmap for this board to determine where we as a district are headed. I can tell you where I would like to go, as a district. But I think it's more important, or as important, to hear from the citizens so that the board can make informed decisions. Otherwise, you'll get my view and hundreds of other views, but they're in isolation. So I think it's well worth the money. I certainly am not looking for anyone else to do my job. This would be in addition to my job. I love my job, but I would love help with that strategic plan piece. So I'm asking you for this investment so we can tell our story. That's all.
I think Angel's idea was to hire a full-time person, so this is presumably cheaper than that.
Very much so, yes. And to find the right person who would have to move here or maybe already lives here, but then learn how to do the job. That's why districts use a firm like the Donovan Group, because they can hit the ground running.
So this would help improve our transparency to a certain degree.
I believe so, yes.
What are the efforts our district is doing currently?
That is a very broad question. Can you be more specific?
I think obviously transparency, communication, we can absolutely 110% do much better at that. And I'm curious what we've tried that hasn't worked to increase the communication, transparency, and things that the Donovan Group would provide. I think there's value in this. I struggle because I don't know what efforts we've put forth that have not worked, resulting in this.
Well, we put together a continuous improvement plan that is long-term through 2024, and we review that regularly with the board. Our family engagement pieces I'm very proud of, but they are in isolation. We had one at the middle school most recently, was so well attended, so much positive feedback, but only those who attended know about it. And so I feel like we're kind of piecemeal. We did have an ESSER survey. We reached out to all the schools. It's been on the website. Last I checked, we had 47 community members weigh in on what they would like to see. So we're still in the process of tying up that feedback so we can present it to the board for ideas. But this is a chance to tie it all together. I mentioned last time with our facilities, maintenance and facilities plan, that should be in front of you all the time, because we have some facilities that we cannot update in terms of what it would cost. We just can't do it. There's too much wrong. So what is going to happen down the road with that? How much do we invest in those buildings and to what end? Those are the things we would like to package together in a strategic plan.
You know, I think another thing that's missing is the now? Okay.
That's better.
Okay. Since the Antigo paper, since the Antigo Daily Journal has evolved in a different direction, we always had that education page, and that was full of information, pictures, the different buildings, building and grounds, the principals, always had articles in there. Everybody was assigned a time, and I think that that was really a nice way to get that out there. And I also would like to just say that I don't feel that I have ever rubber stamped anything. And I've been thinking about this for 2 weeks since it was brought up 2 weeks ago tonight. And I do that with everything that comes up at the committee meeting. And it did come up at our discussion 2 weeks ago. Somebody used that R word. And I know that Andy is not for a referendum. I'm not for a referendum. I think it got, I think it was used as an example of how a group like this, if you were a district, in fact, looking to run a referendum, a group like this would be a way to go, a way to get your information out there, because obviously all the other referendums that have run and failed, except for the one, using outside groups to get your information out there is a way to do it. I think that being able to do this for 1 year for $36,000, we've been accused of not being transparent. I don't want to use the word accused, right? Pretty much that's what it is. I don't know how much more transparent we can be. We're not hiding anything, and it's like this big conspiracy. And if we can use this group to dispel those feelings that people have about the board, then I think $36,000 is a really good investment for the board and the community. So, there.
The thing I think is valuable about this, they're an outside group. They're going to be very objective. They can tell us what we're doing wrong and what we're doing right. They can come up with suggestions. I think it's a good way to get an outsider's point of view. The more, two heads are better than one. Why not make use of it?
Not only that, but they work with a lot of different districts. So, gosh, I think it was 2019 I was able to be at a presentation with them. It was a small group presentation. I think there was like 15 of us. And some of the things that I've been hearing about our district are that we really want to make sure we have high quality curriculum for our kids. We want to make sure it's on rotation. We want to make sure that our clubs and our sports are all getting uniform rotations. We want to make sure that we have plans for our buildings so that we can sustain them without a referendum. And I really think the Donovan group, they have experts in every area. Whereas if, and I'm not saying that this was on the table, if we were to hire one person, they know so much, right? Whereas the Donovan group has experts in tons of areas, or at least in 2019 when I heard the presentation they did. They are high energy, they are quick to come up with things. I was really impressed with them, and I think if we truly need these plans to move our district forward, they're going to be an outside opinion. They're going to have knowledge of what other school districts about our size or with similar struggles are doing. I don't know, I think it's a good use of those funds for 1 year if we're truly going to try to move ourselves forward and come up with a plan. Because once you have that plan in place, then your staff know where you're going. Like everybody's going to know, okay, this is the direction we're going in. This is why I need to buy into that, because we're not just going to do it for a year and drop it. We're not just going to do it for 2 years and drop it. This is building into this and into this and into this. And I think that's how we would move forward. I don't know, I think it's a good idea.
Wait, did you say we have a ESSER survey on our website?
Mm-hmm.
How was that information shared? ESSER funds have obviously been a pretty hot topic in general. And as a parent and as a board member, I guess I did not know that until this moment.
With the board, it was shared. We can review a couple different times. I copied and pasted it so you'll see it again Friday.
Thank you for that. I checked it out. We can review. So.
And it doesn't mean that we're finished eliciting feedback, certainly, but that was our first run through, which was a requirement to have it on the website. So that's what we did.
Still open?
I'm not sure.
What do other districts do if they don't have a group like the Donovan group?
A lot of districts have their own communications person, a full-time, I suppose it would be considered an administrative position, but they have a full-time communications person. So this is.
Or sometimes they'll hire out just for strategic planning. So it might not be with the Donovan group, but it might be with another organization.
So I think Mary made a good point about the newspaper. Things have changed, and we need to figure out how we're going to change with that. I think at the last meeting I said that I thought maybe this Donovan group could help us with our communication with legislators, because there's ways that special ed funding, sparsity aid, economically disadvantaged, all these things could, legislators could change and we'd get more funding. No. Mrs. Barber, what you heard is that I wanted a $1 million referendum. Yeah. I do not want a $1 million referendum. Let me say that $1 million here in Antigo will cost us about 85 cents. You can go to Rhinelander and it costs for 85 cents, they get about 4 million. And so there's this big disparity in property values. That's not really fair for our district. But neither is sparsity aid, neither is the way special ed is funded. And so we really ought to be working with our legislators. And I think we got a great opportunity to do this now. Now, I know Mary Falkowski sent me an email. She told me she's in favor of special ed, increasing special ed funding, sparsity aid. But then ESSER funds came along, and she's, as we all know, she said, you know, I think you're okay with funding the way it is this year. And that's okay, but the next biennium's coming, and we need to work on that. And we need somebody to help work on that. And to come to our taxpayers and say we need a referendum, that's kind of the board's not doing their job. We really need to be working with our legislators first. Just to be clear on that.
And Mary Kay, I would like to, because this has happened before where I voted for different things and it was put into the record that I voted in one way or another, and I'd like it to go in the record that I have never rubber stamped a single thing. Thank you.
So my final thoughts are this. In our last agenda item, we talked about a 25% credit deficiency for our graduating class. We potentially identified math as one of those significant subject areas. And I would like to see discussion on ESSER funds centered upon learning loss and those achievement gaps specifically, but things like curriculum. I think Donovan Group has a lot of value to it, and I think our district could certainly get a lot from contracting with them. My barrier is not knowing what we have done and tried and exhausted our tools and resources internally first.
I don't know that they're exhausted, but everybody in this room wants the district to improve. And I think we'd be foolish not to take this opportunity to help us with our improvement. Our work won't stop, and it's an additional layer.
Okay. Any other comments on this topic? We'll go ahead with that roll call vote.
Deep,
Yes.
Gagnon,
Yes.
Maddox Nelson,
No.
Newfeld,
Yes.
Schrader,
Yes.
Bardo,
No.
Borneman,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes. And we'll go on to item J, consideration to approve girls hockey co-op.
I move the board approve the 2022 Girls Hockey Co-op application as presented.
Second.
Okay, any questions, comments? Tom, is this essentially the same as last year?
Yep. Just another, just ran it out, it's just the renewal.
Okay. If there's no further questions or comments, go ahead with the roll call, Mary Kay.
Gagnon,
Yes.
Maddox Nelson,
Yes.
Newfeld,
Yes.
Schrader,
Yes.
Bardo,
Yes.
Borneman,
Yes.
Deep,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes. We'll go on to item K, consideration to approve a uniform replacement plan. And we don't have a suggested motion there?
We do not, because the board expressed interest. That's how this came to be on the agenda, so nobody from admin had a recommendation. But we did, at the board's directive, Tom Schofield and Tim Prunty put together, based on your feedback from last time, an updated rotation proposal, should that be what the board decides to do.
So are we taking action on this tonight, or holding off, or what are we doing here?
That is up to the board. It is on the agenda as action.
I'll make a motion to accept the uniform replacement rotation as presented.
Second.
Okay, my question, Dr. Bardo, is, are you saying, he's got that presented as in today's dollars?
Correct.
For the next 10 years?
Which is going to change.
It's going to
Obviously.
change. It's going to change.
Yes,
Okay.
because uniforms go up every year, so it's a projection. But the big thing is, by having it spread out where coaches will know when it's their turn to look at uniforms. Tom's made it where the numbers are basically close to each other for each year, and I appreciate that, Tom. So I think they've done a good job, Tim and Tom, and I was for a uniform rotation. I've never been in a school district that didn't have a uniform rotation, so I think it's a good idea.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments on it?
Tom, so essentially we're funding the other sports fully, but like band and choir, we might only be funding half-ish.
Well, first I want to apologize for not being here in the past because we had a lot of Tuesday night events, and the last board meeting I was sick, so I apologize for that. But yes, essentially what I came up with was the total price. I know Jill had a question before, 150,000. Well, I thought the board did 25,000 and 50%, which I just did total cost. And then, yeah, there was, a couple other things that I kind of fixed, that just like the track and field, that was basically bought by one head coach and spread out boys, girls, and cross country. So there's some things that I ain't sure of, but yeah, essentially the 50% paid for the band uniforms was a recommendation by the board, made by the board. And the uniform cost I brought to Tim, and we made this together. And then for the approval, like that was for you guys to decide and for me to answer any questions.
But so the other sports we're funding 100%,
Correct.
essentially. Okay.
Do you mean, when you say that, you mean uniforms?
Uniforms. Would that be uniforms? Yes. So my question is procedurally, we can't technically bind future boards, but we're kind of just hoping you'll put it in the budget. Is that sort of how this works, Tim? And then my other question would be to Tom is this our best way to spend our athletic money? Like, do you really need this $15,000 a year more to pay refs? Or are we going to come up with that some other way?
JD, to answer your question, let's go back to that budget document.
And I know officials, you talked about refs and officials, and I also heard how much, what is the officials' pay right now? It has jumped up to, somebody threw out the number 80, which it was 90 per official at varsity events, and it's actually being jumped up to $120 for the majority of the sporting events for varsity level. And every other lower level is also being bumped up, so that's taken into account with that as well.
And then they get mileage too, then, right? If they're
And
coming, yeah.
$30 mileage for varsity officials, lower level would pay 0.30 mileage.
So if the board could open up that document and just kind of give me a show of hands when you're ready.
Which number was that under again?
A under board action.
So as additional expenditures, under additional expenditures, I've got athletics. And just talking with Tom, the two of us were talking about Tom mentioned about a 25% increase in officials' wages for next year. And that's about $10,000, maybe a little more than $10,000. And then we weren't sure where the board was going to go with funding the uniforms. And so together for the wages, and at that time we were thinking you did 50% for the band, maybe we do 50% for the uniforms. And so we're saying between the two of them, a $25,000 increase. So once the board takes action, I can revise this document to reflect the costs that you're suggesting you want approved.
So it's like 10,000 for the refs plus 16,000, or how much is left after the band uniform for this year? Or is it just subtract 25,000 from that number and that's it?
So we had some unexpended funds that we hadn't allocated that I just transferred to Tom's budget area when the board made that motion. So Tom received an additional apparel budget of $25,000 this year, just a one-time.
So right now, it's Dr. Barto's motion. Are we going to go back and give the band another $25,000? Because that's,
No.
There was a donation, did we?
well, there is a donation for it, but you said the motion is as presented here, and that's the way it's presented.
Well,
Then I'll make an amendment to my motion to change the 50,000 to 25.
Okay. I would second that amendment.
I thought it was understood that it was 25,
Well,
but
and
no problem.
that's what I thought.
No problem.
Clarified too was the total cost, but yeah, I
So
think it's a good clarification.
so you'll have to make a vote on the amendment. So I'll amend my motion.
Okay.
If you amend your own motion, do we still have to vote on it?
Well, once it has been done, it belongs to the house.
Yes.
Okay.
So, yeah, we do.
All right.
We do.
Thank you.
Okay.
Did somebody second?
I did.
Yeah, Andy did. Great. Thank you.
Okay, any other, I guess we're on to the amendment.
So
Any questions on
could
the
you
amendment?
also amend the number there from 61,600 to 36? You're dropping that by half.
You're right. 36. The 61,600 becomes 36,600 because that 50,000 for the band becomes 25.
But just
Okay.
make that change.
Okay. Any further questions on this amendment?
Would you mind reading the amendment before we approve it, just so it's clear?
The amendment reads to adjust the marching band uniform rotation amount from $50,000 to $25,000 for a total of $36,600 in the annual cost.
Thank you, Mary Kay. Any other questions? Go ahead and do a roll call then.
Maddie Nelson,
Yes.
Neufeld,
Yes.
Schrader,
Yes.
Bardo,
Yes?
Borneman,
Yes.
Deep,
Yes.
Gagnon,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes. And then we're back to the original motion as amended.
So in 2 years, Tim, new board, do they have to reapprove this? Or is this just going to be in Tom's budget, if we have the money? But if there's cuts, it might be something we consider.
That would be the typical way we would do it. Propose it as a cut going in the future.
The way this is presented, those choir robes in 10 years, that's 100% of the cost, correct?
That's the way it was presented.
And in 20 years, we'd cover 100% of the band uniforms. Not that we have much say what's happening then. Well,
Agreed.
some people might, but
Will I be retired?
I don't think
not? Do we want to say we're covering the band uniforms fully in 20 years and the choir uniforms fully in 10? It's not worth talking about.
It's not, I mean, let's face it, the estimate of 16,670 for the next school year might not be the correct number. It might be 14.8, it might be 18.7. We don't know. And each year going forward, we won't know, but Tim will let us know what it's going to be, or Tom will, each year, and we'll have to make a decision.
You know, Tom is given a budget area, and he has to juggle what he pays for officials, what he pays for transportation. Is there money left over at the end of the season to buy bats, balls, and whatever else he needs? So the expectation is we would add $15,000 or $16,000 for uniforms. That's getting added to his budget, and Tom just manages that budget.
Okay. Anything else? Then we'll go ahead with the roll call.
Neufeld? Read it, please. What we're doing.
The amendment.
We're voting on the amendment.
The main
No,
motion.
no,
That-
the main motion with the amendment,
Yes. So it's a yes.
Yes.
I want a yes.
hopefully.
Yes.
Schrader.
Yes.
Bartle.
Yes.
Borneman. Deep.
Yes.
Gagnon.
Yes.
Maddox Nelson.
Yes.
Mary.
Yes. Moving on to item L, consideration to approve overnight travel.
I move the board approve the overnight stay for the Boys and Girls Track Team on April 1st and 2nd, 2022 to Minnesota State University at Mankato, Minnesota for the MSU Varsity Showcase.
I'll second it.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes. We'll go on to item M, second reading of NEOLA Volume 31, Number 1, Policy Updates and Policy 8510 Wellness Update.
I move the board approve the second reading of NEOLA Volume 31, Number 1, Policy Updates and Policy Number 8510 Wellness Update.
Second.
Any questions or comments on this? We had some things that we,
The changes are reflected in this reading.
okay? Everything's good?
Yep.
Let's do a roll call.
Schrader.
Yes.
Bartle.
Yes.
Borneman.
Yes.
Deep.
Yes.
Gagnon.
Yes.
Maddox Nelson.
Yes.
Neufeld.
Yes.
Mary.
Yes. And we'll go on to item N, report of employee resignations and retirements.
I move the board accept the following retirements. Mary Young, East Elementary teacher. Claire Herron, East Elementary teacher. Jennifer Bain, East Elementary administrative assistant. Connie DeHart Greeley, library media specialist. And Dave Kern, head custodian. And the following resignations. August Belling, North Elementary teacher. Jane Babler, instructional assistant. Sophie Wachtel, high school substitute teacher. And Alexandria Brown, middle school 5th grade teacher. Second. And there's some years accumulated there with the staff that's retiring and resigning.
I want to say Claire was my kindergarten teacher. She was excellent. I had lots of fun. So, miss her.
She mentioned you in her letter.
Yes, she did.
Yeah, so I'd just like to say thank you to all those retirees and the people who are resigning and for the time they put in here. It's very important to us. And any other comments? And all those in favor?
Aye.
And any opposed? Okay, we will go on to a report of district new hires.
I move the board approve the following new hires. Stephanie Margraf, school lunch assistant. Destiny Jacoby, special education instructional assistant, East Elementary. Tony Edge, special education instructional assistant, North Elementary. And Tracy Quaid, special education instructional assistant, school distance.
Second.
Okay,
Horniman,
Yes.
Deep,
Yes.
Gagnon,
Yes.
Matic Nelson,
Yes.
Newfeld,
Yes.
Schrader,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes. And we will go to item P, report of donations.
I move the board accept the following donations: $1,000 in-kind donation from Crash Lumber for Oldham for the Environmental Education Center at Vulcan, $25,000 from an anonymous donor for the high school band uniform purchases in memory of James Trout, $250 from Covantage Credit Union for boys soccer, and $250 from Covantage Credit Union for girls soccer, for a total amount of $26,500.
Second. And that's pretty amazing.
We also had a donation delivered here this evening that we would like to add to this for approval. It's from Tony Koss and the Antigo High School class of 1978. Raised money for a band donation of $1,300. And they also extend a challenge to all other graduating classes to match or exceed that amount for band or any other district initiative that you would like to support.
I'll make an amendment to the motion to that the total of the donations is $27,800.
You have to second that? Second that, second.
Okay, any discussion there? All those in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Any opposed? And now we're at the original motion. I'd just like to say thank you to all those who donated, and I'm really happy to see that donation there for James Trout. He was, I didn't make it that far. I had his wife for a band teacher, but I didn't make it to him. Okay. Any other comments?
This is a really cool challenge.
He was in high school. I didn't make it past 5th grade.
Oh.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And then we'll confirm that the next meeting is April 26th, 6 o'clock. And then we'll go into closed session, consideration of a motion to adjourn into closed session pursuant to section 19.851C of the Wisconsin statutes for the purpose of considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility specifically for an employee performance evaluation.
So now, we gotta reread that.
So moved.
Oh, yeah, okay, good.
And a second.
Sure, second.
Roll call.
Horniman,
Yes.
Deep,
Yes.
Gagnon,
Yes.
Matic Nelson,
Yes.
Newfeld,
Yes.
Schrader,
Yes.
Bartle,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes. Okay, 5 minutes, 5-minute break. We'll be back here at 7:30.
What is the question about implicit bias?
Have you ever done any sessions for our staff and?
Yes,
Yeah.
as part of ICS. Quite a bit, actually. Very eye-opening. I think they,
In fact, I'm going to do two land rounds as well as now Michigan is requiring that as requirement for license.
oh,
Now they have to do it before August. Really working on those
I shouldn't have, but
Are you gonna make people do the tests like the
The IAT?
where whatever it is where they flash it on the screen or whatever and you?
Yeah, if you have not done it, Harvard has this.
Can we do a roll call to come out?
Harvard
I heard about it, but I don't think I ever watched it.
You gotta do a roll call to come out of closed session, can we do that?
Yeah, we did go in, but I don't know.
Okay, let's do one and come out.
Sometimes it wasn't updated.
Deep,
Yes.
Gagnon,
Yes.
Magic Nelson,
Yes.
Newfeld,
yes.
Schrader,
Yes.
Bartle,
Yes.
Borneman, Mary.
Yes. Dustin, are we ready to go? Yep. As a result of closed session, no action was taken. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Did it work or do we need to do it again?
Oh, I don't know, did we ever get donations like?
Should we? It's good. Yeah.
Well, it better be after you messed up last time. That's the first week.